Well, hi, I'm Macdonald Two-Step. I'm very happy to be here today in warm, but not exactly sunny Vilcabamba. My friend, come join us.
Hola. We're in Mexico. No, we're in Ecuador. So I'm going to ask questions to my friend here, Two-Step. When did you come to Ecuador first come here?
I first came in 2008 in February. I had a couple Spanish teachers who were from Ecuador, and they talked to me about the beauty of the country, and I thought that they were the most beautiful women I'd ever seen, and they were studying to get their master's degrees, but they were also helping out with the Spanish program. One of them actually had been an actor in soap operas here. So but then I checked it out and I went ostensibly to study Spanish because I was having difficulty with my classes and I wanted to do an immersion thing. But then I liked it and I stayed. 2 months later I found myself in Lima, Peru. My second day in Lima, Peru, I got a job teaching English at Volvo. But then eventually relocated to Ecuador.
What new discoveries in medicine have the potential to revolutionize health?
Well, that's a great question. You know, new modalities like body talk and touch for health that can actually elicit answers from the body unencumbered by verbalization. These have the potential to really be a breakthrough in medicine because you're taking out all the guesswork. And the way that allopathic or conventional medicine works is it's diagnosed based on symptoms, and then based on the symptoms there's statistics and what works best for most people. But you might have anxiety and it could be because of a digestive disorder, or maybe you're depressed but it's because you have a thyroid deficiency or a hypothalamus deficiency. And through body talk and these other modalities you can actually ask the body yes or no questions. And people might object to that and say, well, that's like a pendulum or a Ouija board. But really it's not, because there's a big difference between asking an inanimate object, like a pendulum, a question, and asking the body a question, because the body can communicate and it has its own intelligence. And these new modalities are based on discoveries in quantum physics. It's similar to the muscle testing, you know, where they put a little bit of something that you might be allergic to on your hand, and then if your muscle goes weak, then you're allergic to it.
It's like asking a question, you tell somebody's disease.
Yeah, and that's exactly how it works. Yeah.
How did you become knowledgeable to this? Was your family into this sort of stuff?
I have a friend. My mother was a nutritionist. I had my first Coca-Cola at a party when I was in my 20s. I'd never tasted it, and because we grew up having natural sodas made of fruit juice and herbs and bark.
Nice.
And when I tasted it, I was like, oh, what's the big deal? I don't like this so much. Unfortunately, I kind of rejected health, and I just was eating whatever. I remember going to work and microwaving TV dinners, and then I got sick, and I had some digestive disorders, and at the time I thought it was just anxiety, but then through meeting a yoga teacher who was also a naturopathic physician, she was able to address these underlying issues and treat them naturally, and it's giving me the confidence to know that I can go into the future with optimal health.
Okay.
So it's through the friendships I made with her that I kind of got into this.
So as far as your parents go, your dad was more of an author and your mother was more the health person, or were they both healthy?
My mom was more the expert on health.
Okay.
But my dad, he's written over 100, he's edited, published, and written over 100 books.
That's a lot of books.
And when he was in university as a young man, he became enamored of the literature of Scotland, particularly George Macdonald. I remember the first time that he went to Scotland to check it out, and these postcards coming back of this wonderful scenery and the castles. And now that my parents actually spend 3 months out of the year in Scotland promoting the work of George Macdonald. Like they have a George Macdonald bench put in, and my mom's a harpist, she's a musical therapist.
They made a bench for him?
Yeah, commemorative bench.
Where was that at?
In Huntly, Scotland.
Huntly, Scotland, okay.
Yeah, and my mom's a musical therapist. She plays harp at hospitals, and when they go to Scotland, she's also learning the folk music of Scotland and learning how to play it on the harp and bringing it back.
And she's still alive?
Yeah, both my parents are still alive.
Okay.
Oh, that's cool, that guy on the donkey over there riding by.
The nice thing about Ecuador for me is it's like where the past meets the future, because you got the futuristic cars and that sort of thing, and then you still have people working and growing, because that's how they make their money. A lot of food here.
It's kind of like the 1950s in a way, how the U.S. was. Less regulations. If you want to build a house, you just get some guys together and start throwing stuff down. They don't have a lot of the same regulations.
Oh, yeah. Out here in town, they're starting to get more like that. Are your brothers also public people?
Yeah, both my brothers are writers. I have a younger brother that's just had his second novel published. The first one won some awards. And my other brother was a journalist for 10 years.
And where does he live, or do they live?
They live in the States. He lives in Washington State.
Washington, D.C.
No, Washington State.
Washington State.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Listen.
Yeah.
You're going to hear some noise in the background, and they drive by, and they're saying, "Do you have you want vegetables?" They got vegetables for sale. Because we live way out in the country. I live way out in the country. He's visiting right now.
Even in the city, you hear
they still running around.
A loudspeaker, mongos, mongos.
That's so beautiful because there's so much food here.
I have raw milk delivered to my doorstep.
Tell us about that and how.
Yeah, it's a little guy on a motorcycle. I've known him for years, and he just comes by, and I wait outside from 9 to 10, and he's there, and I get the milk.
How much is it?
80 cents a liter.
For genuine grass-fed cows.
Yeah, and it's so creamy.
Yeah.
He gives you a little less than a liter for 80 cents.
When we were in Vilcabamba, which there are a lot of gringos there, they charge about how much for a liter?
It's really expensive.
Like that was a half a liter for like $2.50 or something like that.
Yeah, it's really expensive
yeah.
here. I wanted to get my hair cut today, and she wanted $6.
Yeah.
In Santo Domingo, it's $2.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, well, okay, so how long have you been aware of the weather manipulation of our skies?
Yeah. Well, around 2005, I first heard about it on Coast to Coast, and I remember it was Scott Stevens. And before the commercial, George Norrie said, when we come back, we're going to be talking about it with a guy who thinks they're controlling the weather. I thought, oh, wow, this is so far out, but as I listened, and then as I heard shows with people like Dr. Nick Begich, and then going and checking out his writing, became more aware of it. And then also at the time in around 2005, 2006, I was a political activist in Oregon and participated in 9/11 truth groups, and they started talking about it. So then I started observing the skies, and just undeniable. Now, I grew up in a place called Eureka, California, Humboldt County. It was very counterculture. It had the reputation in the 70s of being someplace with very clean air, very clean water. I don't think you can say that today. And Eureka is a small town, 30,000 at max. They're doing loops over the city all day long, these military jets. How do we know they're military? That place
there's no flight path. They're just buzzing around.
Yeah, and it creates a cloud cover and drops the temperature. That's geoengineering.
Why do you do the political activism?
Trying to be an example to the community, and I don't want to have my future grandchildren come to me and say, this is the world you bequeathed us, why weren't you doing anything?
I agree with you 100% on that.
And if everybody that was aware of the chemtrail spraying and the inside job terror attacks, if everybody was aware of that we're spreading the news, then these lies couldn't continue to foster. But it's because we don't do anything that nobody knows it's happening. I'm starting to get a little worried because I think that my battery might run out on my camera.
We can always pause it and we'll join it together so it...
Yeah. If the battery runs out, then we've lost everything.
Okay, let's check it. It doesn't show battery thing, but it's still recording.
Okay.
We can chop this
No, I think
out.
It's actually the memory that I'm concerned about.
Oh, yeah?
The memory.
Oh, let's just keep going and see how it works out. Have you had whistleblowers coming to you to talk to you about things?
Yeah, kind of accidentally, but yes. I met an ex-intelligence agent who was able to confirm about the false flag terrorism Of course, I knew that inside job terror attacks were going on because reading the books of David Ray Griffin and watching movies like Loose Change, he was actually able to offer personal testimony along those lines that is not shocking to me, but was able to corroborate from personal experience.
Well, of course, we have so much to talk about, and we're only going to be able to touch on a few things here, but what do you think of CNN, The Economist, and the New York Times?
Well, I think they're fake news.
Yeah. And why do you think that?
They're not reporting what really happens, and they have a political agenda. And it's beyond just left or right. They're really not reporting the news, and they're cover-up artists. I think it's a fantasy.
Are they owned by people that are trying to control the world?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they're all owned by the same people, and they have the same agenda. So, for example, when triplets are born, and they're fine and healthy, and then they get a vaccine, and they all are diagnosed in the same day with autism, that's not reported, even though that's the smoking gun that vaccines are causing autism. And the doctors say, well, that's genetic. But no, autism is an environmental issue when it's caused by vaccines.
Well, there's a movie called Vaxxed, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Robert De Niro.
Robert De Niro has a child that has autism because of the vaccines, and so he has proof. He's living proof.
Yeah, and he actually did a documentary.
So that's a whole subject in itself.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about nanoparticles.
Yeah, well, this is a brave new world that we're living in. I don't know if anybody's read Prey by Michael Crichton, but the nanoparticles are what they're spraying, aluminum nanoparticles, and scientists like Dave Wigington found 50% increase of nanoparticles in the soil and the water, which doesn't exist naturally. But there's no regulation of how it's also entering our food system, it's entering our water, and these act as nanotransmitters that can then be fed back into supercomputers. And it's meant to interact now with the Internet of Things, where your toaster, your vacuum cleaner, your water, everything will be smart.
And communicate with each other.
Yeah.
Smart is kind of a lie, like smartphone. They teach us smart.
And they're trying to bring in the next generation, which will be 5G, which is actually in the microwave zone. So they're going to have to mount these antennas and these little boxes on houses because they can't.
Short wave or something like that.
Yeah, and it affects the oxygen molecule of the brain. And there's a group of women actually here in Vilcabamba who have become activists to say we don't want 5G in our valley because the elites have it planned for the entire world. And you're going to see a lot of new diseases that are going to be blamed on other things, and then vaccines for that. You know, there could be a lot of new diseases as a result of that. I don't know how anyone can live with electromagnetic fog. I've never had a cell phone.
There's a thing called a wine test that a person can take. Can you tell us about the wine test?
Well, if you rinse your mouth out when your mouth is clean with like a thimble full of red wine, swish it around for a few seconds, and then put it in a bowl, in a white bowl, then let it sit for a while, the nanoparticles will separate. And I actually did this with me a few days ago, and after I tossed everything out, I rinsed the bowl around, and I tossed the water out, and there's all these little things sticking to the side. So I don't know, it could be in the realm of urban myth, or there could be something to it.
Well, there's YouTubes people can go to and look up the wine test.
Still, I'm kind of a skeptic, but I'm looking into it.
And so 5G is supposedly a military-grade weaponry that they're using on us.
Yeah, it's actually what they have in the body scanners when you go through those body scanners and at the airports. And if you don't want to go through the body scanners, then you're sexually molested.
Yeah, I tried that once, and they did do that, and then they threw me right through there anyhow. Okay. What are your plans for the future?
Well, I'd like to stay in Ecuador and continue to teach English, maybe get a second job. But then also...
Only because you don't have as much hours.
Yeah, I'd like to have more hours, but I'm sure in time that will come. Yeah. But I'd also like to get married and stay in Ecuador. I'd also like to continue the political work, ideally to be able to interview people all over the world through video conference or Skype, record it, and then slap it on these video hosting websites.
Well, in the beginning of this interview, you talked about how beautiful the women are. Could you elaborate on that? I mean, like Colombian women, Peruvian women.
Yeah, especially around the coast, the women in Ecuador are have their reputation of being very beautiful. That's not to say that they're not in the mountains, but along the coast, you really have a mixture. So they're
pretty, or they're just nice people?
They're really nice people. They're very warm. They're very affectionate.
You've had some girlfriends, right?
well, we're not going to talk about that.
Oh, yeah.
But they're close to the home, you know. I think in some ways it's like American women were in the 1950s, you know. They usually stay at home until they get married.
Yeah. Because you're kind of a natural kind of guy.
Yeah.
You know, you are healthy for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, what do you like about Ecuador the most? Or just
well, the people are really friendly. The weather is great.
And
I really love the exotic fruit. Yeah.
Would you suggest people to come here?
Yeah, I would. A lot of Americans have settled in places, North Americans, because people from Canada too.
I know.
You called me on that.
Yeah.
They've settled in places like Vilcabamba and Mindo. And if you buy a house for $25,000, you actually get your residency. So Ecuador is one of the easiest countries to immigrate to.
Okay, that's cool.
Well, thank you, amigo, and until the next time.